12 years since 2013. Well, he might be sensitive for these, what do you call those? Steam whistles.
No,
Because,
they have no he like that.
I mean,
They like that kind of stuff.
oh, they do?
Yeah. I'm not scared of them. Yeah, Samir, come up here.
Locomotive number 40 is a 282 Mikado type steam engine built in 1920 by the American Locomotive Company of Schenectady, New York. Originally constructed for the Portland, Astoria, and Pacific Railroad in Oregon, it soon changed hands and went on to serve with other railroads, including the New Haven system, where it was used in both freight and passenger service. Like many steam locomotives of its era, number 40 was eventually retired in the 1950s, when diesel locomotives replaced steam as the dominant power on American railroads. Rather than being scrapped, number 40 was preserved and found a new life with the Valley Railroad in Essex, Connecticut. Acquired in 1977, the locomotive was restored to operating condition and became one of the stars of the Essex steam train and riverboat tourist operation. It continues to operate today, pulling vintage coaches through the scenic Connecticut River Valley and giving visitors a chance to experience a living example of early 20th century American steam railroading. Over a century after its construction, number 40 stands as both a historic artifact and a working machine, symbolizing the transition from the great age of steam to modern railroading. Its survival and continued service reflect the efforts of preservationists to keep railroad history alive, offering an authentic reminder of the power, craftsmanship, and enduring charm of steam locomotives.
Years, and here I am inside the Essex Valley Railroad.
We are now departing Essex Station for a unique journey back in time and to explore the natural beauty of the lower Connecticut River Valley. As we depart Essex Station, we just want to record the following safety announcements. First, please keep all business and ready to save the world. I'm taking my misery, making my pitch, giving everyone's favorite girl. So I'm taking it and fly away. I've never been so high away. No, nobody will make you give me safe. I'm on my way. The restroom facilities are available on the train and boat, and is asking you to move for their location. Also, please keep your shoes off the seats, as dirty seats affect the comfort only for you, but of our fellow guests.
soy. Y me cansé de luchar y de guerra alemana. Estar en la línea de fuego y de meter la mano. Acepto mis errores, también soy humano. Y tú no ves que lo hago porque te amo. Pero ya no tengo más nada que hacer aquí. Me voy, llegó la hora de partir. De mi propio camino seguiré lejos de ti.
So take your aim and fly away. I've never been so high away. No, nobody but me can keep me safe. And I'm on my way. The blackbird is on the rise. I'm flying burning in my eyes. Nobody but me can keep me safe. And I'm on my way.
This locomotive spent most of its life in Riverboat freight service on the Aberdeen and Rockfish Railroad in North Carolina before coming to the Valley Railroad in 1978. Steam locomotives operate by burning fuel in the front box heat, which is used to turn the water in the boiler into pressurized steam. The steam drives the distance from directed to the driving wheel as a physical It was used on its career express train at the Yankee Clipper, which ran along the shoreline between Boston and New York City. The 500 and 600 series coaches were built in 1914 and 1915 by Pullman for the Brownell, Lackawanna, and Western Railroad, and they once ran active commuter service out of the local terminal in New Jersey. The 1000 series coaches, the ones with the modular interiors, were built in 1925 by commuter service on the Central
locomotive in a while.
And so it's something special to be able to get up close because there's not very many around anymore.
No.
until diesel locomotives took over.
Correct. So you'll be on the train for about 45 minutes to start with, and then you're going to be on the boat, and then the train will pick you up again. So the total is 2.5 hours. Only connection on this town in the country.
I'm gonna bring the baby. I have to tell you they're like 2 years old. I'm gonna bring them.
Awesome. We'll look forward to eventually seeing them.
You'll be back. You've been here 3 times when you were
Yeah.
about 3 times.
Until I saw a different steam locomotive number 3025
Yep.
come in. It's like a Chinese type locomotive, but a 282.
Yeah, that locomotive originally came from China, and then I guess you could say Americanized to look more like a New Haven locomotive because that design is loosely based on an American locomotive that the New Haven Railroad also had.
Really?
And since there's no New Haven steam engines left, they decided to contribute to everybody.
That looks funny. And about number 40, it's a 282 Mikado type locomotive. I've been studying on YouTube.
Correct. So it's 3025.
Yeah. Oh, it's also Mikado type?
Yes. 325 and 40 are Mikados. 97 is a 280
It's a
consolidation.
280 consolidated.
Yeah.
I've been studying that on YouTube.
Do you have Max Miller's book Along the Valley Line? That's a great book. It covers the entire history of this railroad. Along the Valley Line, the history of the Connecticut Valley Railroad.
I'll get it for you in your birthday, okay?
Yeah.
If it's not available, I'm sure you can still get a copy of it online. I think I saw a copy of it when I was in here this morning. Valley Railroad.
So like what Peter said, he said both 40 and 3025 are 282 Mikados.
A road called Essex Street. If you keep your eyes up towards the right-hand side of the train in our direction of travel right now, you'll see a large wetland area. This area is called Pratt Cove. Pratt Cove is one of the many tidal marshes on the lower Connecticut River and is impacted by the tides of the main river itself in response to Long Island Sound tides. Estuaries like this are also home to an abundance of wildlife such as ducks, geese, swans, white egrets, red-winged blackbirds, and sometimes osprey, fox, bald eagles, and deer can be seen in this area.
This is gonna be a good video.
featuring the town of Deep River. Back around the turn of the 20th century, this area was a thriving transportation center for the railroad and steamship traffic. Off towards the right-hand side of the train in our direction of travel is Deep River Marina. This area was also home to the Denison Brothers shipyard, where a wide variety of vessels, including over 65 schooners, were built that were used for coastal and West Indies trades. From about 1845 through the mid-1930s, this area also supported many piers and warehouses, which accommodated the great riverboat steamers. As you pass through Deep River Landing, coming up on the left-hand side of the train, again in our direction of travel, you will see a large yellow and brown structure. That structure is the original Deep River Freight Station, which dates back to 1890 and is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. You can look out towards the right-hand side of the train, again in our direction of travel right now, at approximately 3 o'clock position, you'll notice a large white and blue vessel. That vessel is our riverboat that manufactured for basically the 15 train and combination tickets. The manufacturers of the riverboat will be taken later on in your journey.
I'll see.
Almost the 4 o'clock position at the opposite bank of the river, you'll be able to see our riverboat, the Becky Thatcher again. That again is the large white and blue vessel with the American flag on the top deck.
Crossing approaching.
We are now in the beautiful town of Rochester. You may have noticed a small metal structure on the left-hand side of the train in the direction of travel. That structure was once the original Riverboat station, which once stood at North Haven, Connecticut. Today, this is now known as Chester Station. The original Chester Station is on the left, across the street. It's a large ranch-style building well as our train will be crossing over the Chester Creek watershed area. This area is the habitat of the great blue heron, but other species of wildlife, such as osprey, swans, and other dolphins can be found here. Coming in on the right-hand side of the train, again, we are going to show you right now. We're going to use the front-hand side of the 2 o'clock position. We'll have a notable view of Gillette's Castle. Now, Gillette's Castle has absolutely nothing to do with the shaving company of the stadium. Gillette's Castle took its name from its owner, William Gillette, who was the country's biggest stage runner and actor in the 19th and early 20th centuries. He was best known for having liquidated the role of Sherlock Holmes on Broadway. Construction of Gillette's Castle began in 1914 and was completed in 1990. This is the northernmost point of today's coach train ride. Our railroad continues another 4 miles to the north into the town of Haddon. Our very elegant Essex Clipper dinner train, which operates on weekends, May through October, and also on Friday evenings, June, July, and August, uses this additional track. Our dinner train is a very special experience and harkens back to the
well, this line didn't go to New York City, but the old Saybrook connected with the New Haven Railroad shoreline to Boston, New York City. So in old Saybrook, you had the option of either taking the train east to New London, Providence, or Boston, or you go west to cities like New Haven, Stamford, New York City. Right. Here you go all the way to Grand Central.
Actually, there's a museum in England.
Not yet. Just 1 second.
Alright folks, we're approaching a road called Railroad Avenue here in the town of Chester, Connecticut. If you're facing a rush of travel right now, look out towards the right-hand side of the train at a 3 o'clock position, directly across the street. You'll notice a large brick structure with a fieldstone chimney. As for residents, the current Chester station, a small yellow structure with a brown trim on the outside, was the former Quinnipiac station, which once stood at North Haven, Connecticut.
Mom.
Remember there's a picture of him in my
get turned around and we start heading south, you're not going to know which way you're going, unless you're paying attention. Anyway, I have a little quiz for you. Raise your hand if you know how to read a compass. Northeast, south, and west, right? Okay. Raise your hand if you're old enough to remember those fold-up maps that you get out of the glove compartment. Some of you. Raise your hand if you have a cell phone and you know how to read your GPS. Okay. So we all are pretty good with directions, right? All right, here's the quiz. West Bank. Right now we're facing north. We're going to turn around. Which direction are we headed? South. Okay, and this is an island. Eustatia Island. You don't have to remember that. But if this is the West Bank, and this is an island, what's that out there? East Bank? Yeah? You sure? Anybody have any other guesses? What's that? I heard somebody. West, no, that's the West Bank. The West Bank is behind us. What's that right there? What? The North Bank? No, north is that way, sir. East Bank. Does everybody think that's the East Bank out there? Oh, come on. Last trip I had a lot of people looking at me kind of like, they were a little more careful. They didn't want to commit. All right, I'll let you know something. It's a trick question. That is the West Bank. This is an island, and that's a bigger island. Take a look at that island. That is a huge island. That is the largest island on the Connecticut River, and the newest. But the reason why it's a trick question is because that island once was the east bank of the Connecticut River. Not too long ago, actually. It is the newest island on the Connecticut River, and a hurricane came through the area in 1854 and changed what was Seldon Neck at the time, the east bank of the river, into Seldon Island. That is Seldon Island, and when we head over there, we'll be going up the main channel, and we'll go along Seldon Island, and I'll tell you more about weeds growing. Anyway, back over off the port side, right at 9 o'clock right now, you can see a whole bunch of little wood ducks there. You'll probably see some cormorants on the southern end of the island. Cormorants won't necessarily be in the water because, unlike ducks that have oily skin, they can be on the water all day. Cormorants do not have oily skin. If they stay on the water or in the water for too long, they get waterlogged. They'll sink. So we see them oftentimes up on the docks. Like there's a tower down here, a little navigational tower. They like to hang out there on the rock tower and open up their wings and dry out. Sometimes they're out there all day long. We think they're getting a suntan, but they're black birds. They don't need to try to get a suntan. Anyway, there are, like I said, wood ducks, cormorants, egrets, ospreys, occasional eagle. We've also seen deer on Eustatia Island. Oh, by the way, this used to be called Christmas Tree Island. The reason for that, many years ago, there were a lot of evergreens on the island. They would send a small or dock right over the island, and they would harvest these trees, and they would put them on the barge, take them on over to our dock, bring them up to the railroad, and put them on flatbed cars, and live in a town that borders the railroad. You could get a Christmas tree island. But fire broke out on the island one year, and it pretty much diminished, almost completely diminished the population of everything. So they stopped harvesting. Now it's called Eustatia Island. I don't know where that name comes from, or I'm worried about it. Google that if you want. Let me know what you come up with. But now what we see on that island, no more harvesting of evergreens, just a lot of birds and occasional deer on the island. And I think it was 2 2 years ago, my fellow deckhand Madison, I like to pick on them, know that they're aware of, even if they're not familiar with the channel or the length of the island, they see this marker 35 and they know this is the southern tip of the station. Now you can see the cormorant up on the rock. Hang out here, this is danger. Main channel. Here we are again looking at Seldon Island, the largest island on the Connecticut River. A hurricane came through the area and it flooded in the north end of the island. At the time, it was known as Seldon Island. This hurricane only about 12 miles from Long Island Sound. So we're at the southern end of the river for sure. All that water came flooding into that little inlet, and the water washed right over South Connecticut, basically took over all this land. When the hurricane passed and the floodwaters receded, there was no more South Connecticut, just Seldon Island. All the commercial property, you know, look right over across the starboard side right now, there's a brown sign, the yellow brown box. Does anybody know that brown box? I'll give you a hint. This is also a campground, Seldon Island State Park. Four campsites in the entire island. Only four structures in the entire island. Campsites, more structures. Anybody? And outhouses. We got 4 campsites, we got 4 outhouses. So on that whole island, pretty big island, only 4 campsites on the entire island. That's what I call really secluded camping. If you're a camper, you're an experienced camper, what you want to do is call the state of Connecticut. This is considered a gem of the Connecticut River. It's a beautiful island. Call the state of Connecticut, tell them you want to camp on Seldon Island. You can get a permit for one night only, for $10. The reason why you can only get one night, again, there are only 4 campsites on the entire island. There's a waiting list. You can make a reservation to get a campsite for one night. And while you got them on the phone, you want to ask them about the wildlife conditions on the island. Just like Seldon Island, all the same birds. You have cormorants, wood ducks, osprey, egrets, occasional eagle. You will also find deer on the island, and bobcats, and black bear. So you want to know what the wildlife situation is like on the island. Know what you're getting into. You might even find some two-legged creatures on the island. Those folks, I don't believe they're camping. That's not a campsite. But now if you're not so experienced at camping, or you might be what I like to call a soft camper. I mean, you like the great outdoors, you like to be in nature, you might even like to spend the night on an island. but you're a soft camper. I mean, we all want a tent to sleep in, right? And a sleeping bag. And, you know, the weather's starting to get a little cooler, so you might want a couple extra blankets and maybe some extra pillows. And you probably want a cooler full of food, even though you're only camping for one night. And if you're a soft camper, you might not know how to make a campfire, so you probably want to bring a little propane stove or a little camp stove of some kind. And of course, you want to look good in the morning, so you got to bring your hair dryer, right? And a generator to operate the hair dryer. Folks, here's the thing. The only way on or off the island, you saw it down there, is by boat. All the property on the east side of the island, on the mainland actually, that faces the east side of the island, all of that property is privately owned. There is no access to the island from the east. What you have to do is you have to put a boat in, like you saw down there. Put a boat in the river about a mile north of the northern tip of the island. And you come downriver and you pull into Seldon Creek, just north of the island, or you can pull right ashore on the North Beach. We'll see the North Beach in a few minutes. And you pull your boat ashore, tie it off to a tree, get your gear out of your boat, and then start hiking the island looking for your one campsite in port on a mile-long island. Or you could look all the way across the river at Chester Point Marina. It's a nice marina. We actually keep one of our boats there in the winter. So we're moving further north on the island. Well, by the way, there is one other way to get on the island. I'm sorry, I was mistaken. You can get on by kayak or canoe or motorboat or seaplane. A couple weeks ago, we saw a seaplane tied up just off the Seldon Island, maybe less than 25 yards offshore, and got anchored in something. That's a pretty extraordinary way to get on the island. Folks, these people here, they're not camping. They're day camping. They bring their boat, they drop an anchor, and they spend the day on the beach. Everybody wave. They're having a good time out there. Labor Day weekend on Seldon Island. You can't beat it. But camping overnight might be kind of nice too. Just make sure you clean up after you. If you're eating anything, make sure you're not leaving anything out for the bears or the bobcats. And this is Seldon Creek right here. This is where the river literally ran into this inlet and washed over all of Seldon, all the way south to the southern tip of the island. This creek goes all the way around the backside or the east side of the island, all the way south, about a mile, a little over a mile, down to where it comes out back out on the Connecticut River. You can take the motorboat all the way around. Now we know we're looking at the mainland. There are only 4 structures on the island, and this is not one of them. So this is north of Seldon Creek. This house was owned by a gentleman who had a company that had the rights to the flap on, flap off. Remember? Clap your hands, the light comes on. When we're on an evening cruise, just before sunset, we ask the captain to get as close to the house as possible. We count to 3, we all clap our hands. The lights never come on. We think that we probably forgot to pay his electric. Anyway, he owns the property for years. He passed away a couple of years ago. He left it to his heirs. It's really quick. I'm not going to talk about the White Bill never had a single opera performed here, never. But there have been many, many musicals that have made it to Broadway. The Opera House has won several Tony Awards for some of the shows that made their debut right there. And right now, if you're an Elvis fan, they're doing All Shook Up. The restaurant right next to the Opera House called the Galston House. So go see All Shook Up and then go over to the Galston House. The runway stops. After the runway is all the Nature Conservancy that I was telling you about. So now that we're back into the no-wake zone, between Lord's Island
Constitution State of Connecticut.
Look at that flag right
train speaking. Our train is less than 2 minutes out from arriving back at Essex Station. Please stay in your seats until I announce its